David, the mic is yours.
Hello, everybody. I'm David Petersen, Nancy's husband. Thank you all for coming out for the celebration of her life. And Tom, thanks for the plan. One thing we have an advantage of with these chairs, they're movable, so if your groups want to move together, we're kind of keeping distance maybe between the groups, but feel comfortable handling the space as you see fit. Anyway, thank you very much for coming out to see and participate in this celebration of Nancy's life. And I look forward to talking to you all in the reception afterwards.
True simplicity is gained. To bow and to bend, we will not be ashamed. To turn, turn will be our delight, till by turning, turning, we come round right. Tis a gift to be simple, tis a gift to be free, tis a gift to come down where you want to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, it will be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend, we will not be ashamed. To turn, turn will be our delight, till by turning, turning, we come round right.
Thank you. I'm Craig Endicott, a cousin to many of the folks down here. Our parents, 7 siblings, so we have a few cousins. I'm personally grateful to be here, to be invited into a complex time in our family. You'll note in the program that there is space for family and friends to share memories and Thanksgivings. For some folks, in remembering Nancy, that will be, I give thanks for her commitment to the environment. And for others, it might be, I give thanks for her, and it's a story. Feel free to do whatever of those. If you feel comfortable coming up here, this microphone is great, and sometimes it's easier to understand folks when they can see the body language, etc. So if you're comfortable coming up here, please do that. And I expect there will be more than enough stories that we'd like to hear, so if you don't feel comfortable coming up here, please share those stories with us during the reception following this service. Let us pray. Gracious God, we ask your blessing as we gather to give thanks for the life of our sister Nancy. We thank you for giving her to us to know and to love as a companion in our pilgrimage on earth. And we ask that in your mercy, you would welcome her and strengthen her memory in us so that she might continue to inspire us to lives of love and service. Amen. There is in your program a reading from Ecclesiastes. I would ask that you would join in reading. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to throw away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep, a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace.
Hello everyone, I'm Nancy's nephew Eric. I grew up with my parents in Peoria, Illinois, so I only saw the Petersens every year or two. Even so, it was always clear to me what a strong woman Nancy was. She knew when to ask for help, yes, but what really defined her was how much she fought about helping others. I know how passionate she was about her work as an ESL teacher, providing a vital service for some of the most vulnerable kids in our society. So the reading I picked out for today is an excerpt from former President Obama's address at the 2016 Teacher of the Year celebration. The winner that year was Johanna Hayes, been a high school history teacher and now a U.S. representative from Connecticut's 5th District. I was struck by how similar Nancy and Johanna's philosophies on teaching and on life were. In their daily lives, the men and women who teach our children fulfill the promise of a nation that's always looking forward, that believes each generation has a responsibility to help the next in building this great country of ours and making the world a better place. This is what Johanna said about how she approaches her responsibility. It doesn't matter how bright a student is, or where they rank in a class, or what colleges they have been accepted to if they do nothing with their gift to improve the human condition. She doesn't forget that everyone in her class brings their own different and sometimes difficult circumstances. She meets them where they are. She sees a grace in them, and she sees a possibility in them. And because she sees it, they start seeing it. And this is something that I think is particularly remarkable. Johanna inspires her students to give back. I think she understands that sometimes the less you have, the more valuable it is to see yourself giving, because that shows you the power and the influence that you can bring to bear on the world around you. One year, she had been assigned to a group that seemed unmotivated, so she found out what was distracting them. 7 students in one class had recently lost a parent to cancer. So she organized a Relay for Life event through the American Cancer Society, and it became an annual event at her school. Last year, when Johanna went online to register her team, she noticed not 14 teams led by former students had already signed up. And so it takes a unique leader to give students who don't have a lot to give them themselves. And because Johanna understood those kids, she knew not to set low expectations, but to set high ones and say to them, "You can make a difference." That's the kind of leader our Teacher of the Year is. She knows that if students learn their worth, then the class rank and the college acceptances and the exam scores will follow. And so part of the reason this event is so important is for us to be able to send a message to future generations of teachers, to talented young people all across the country, to understand that this is a dream job. This is an area where you will have more influence potentially than any other profession that you go into. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sharon Green, and Nancy and I taught together since 2008. I met her in the fall of 2008 when I joined the staff of Rockview Elementary School, and I became part of the ESOL team, English as a Second Language. Nancy and I became friends and colleagues at once. 2 days before Nancy passed, we spoke on the phone, and upon hanging up, I wrote a note to her and took it to Dave, along with roses that I promised Nancy I would deliver. I'd like to share some of my thoughts from that note. When I think of Nancy, I see her riding down the hallway with a group of at least 8 kids, 4 per side of her wheelchair, and those students are in line, quiet, and behaving beautifully. She had great expectations for her kids in and out of the classroom. Nancy, I, and others, some of them are here today, ate lunch in the faculty lounge, and she let us know from early on that at lunch she didn't want to talk shop. We had 30 minutes and no more to chat and enjoy other conversation. Often and suddenly, she would disappear, classroom bound, and we all knew we had violated the Nancy no shop talk rule. Nancy and I could do this, loved planning lessons together, discussing outcomes, sharing results, and even when I transferred to another school, we remained buds and talked shop from afar. More recently, in our retirement, we began taking Spanish classes at Montgomery College and then Zoom Spanish. And I looked forward to being in breakout rooms with her where we schmoozed more and Spanish less. We checked our tarea, that's homework, before class, and we were always well prepared for class, hence our schmooze time. But Nancy and I weren't all business. We had many lunches in Garrett Park, Bethesda, and delicious tuna fish sandwiches on their front lawn that David prepared very well when COVID prevented us from eating inside. Finally, as I mentioned at the beginning, 2 days before Nancy died, we spoke on the phone, and I told her I wanted to bring her an orchid for her bedside table. True to Nancy, she said, "I don't like orchids, I like roses." So I brought her roses, gave them to David, and if you don't know, but I'm sure you knew, Nancy said what she felt and didn't hold back. Nancy and I addressed each other as Bud. Hi, Bud. Hi, Bud. So I say to my Bud, Bud, you will always be in my heart.
I'm Laura Motter. I'm Nancy's niece, and I'm going to read 2 poems. This is A Message to You by Margaret Newton. I know that there are different worlds, because our ancestors sent them messages, because lost lovers now live them, because you just said that right now. Are you the carved shoreline, and am I the sweet water sea? Or am I the shifting wind you cannot perceive? This is In Blackwater Woods by Mary Oliver. Look, the trees are turning their own bodies into pillars of light, are giving off the rich fragrance of cinnamon and fulfillment. The long tapers of cattails are bursting and floating away over the blue shoulders of the ponds. And every pond, no matter what its name is nameless now. Every year, everything I have ever learned in my entire lifetime leads back to this: the fires and the black river of loss, whose other side is salvation, whose meaning none of us will ever know. To live in this world, you must be able to do 3 things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it, and when the time comes, to let it go, to let it go.
Hello everybody, my name is Layla Naderi and this is my grandmother Jacqueline Rosenblatt. I'm also the daughter of Jody, who was one of Nancy's very good friends. The Rosenblatt family were like sisters and mothers and brothers to Nancy, and Jackie has a memory to share about a moment she spent with Nancy one afternoon.
Thank you, Layla. I've known Nancy, our family has known Nancy since she was a very young teenager. Her home was so close to ours that with just a hop, skip, and a jump, she could be in my back door kitchen, or the kitchen, and her face would say, "Is Jody home?" And I think from that moment, I was smitten. About this time last year, I received a phone call from Nance at my residence in Owings Mills, Maryland. She said, "Jackie, spring is in full force at this huge garden not far from my home. I don't think you've ever seen it, and it would be great if you could meet me there. We can have a wonderful lunch together." Of course I said yes, and we met at the gardens with packed sandwiches to enjoy a picnic amongst the flowers. We had to move through the pathway so slowly because the visual effect was so full. It was incredible. We could hardly catch our breath with such beauty. It was as if heaven had descended upon us. The trees were budding, the bushes were bursting with color, and massive flower beds made for such a strong and encompassing fragrance. The fountains and ponds among the flowering plants added rhythm and motion to the most heavenly experience. We enjoyed our sandwiches over conversation and laughter, as was often the case when spending time with Nancy. Then we made our way back to our vehicles and said our farewells. This ended up being the last visit we shared with each other, and the memory of her will forever be tied to that lovely spring day in the garden. The power of Jody and Nancy's friendship had made me realize without any discussion that Nancy was in fact the second daughter in our family. She was an extraordinary woman, not a mean streak in her, strong but gentle.
So today we have prepared a gift for Nancy. It has never been done before. We have put my vocals to my grandmother's piano playing. It's a song by Gustav Grieg. It's called Arietta.
So, I'm Jody. I'm the one without the talent. But when you're sandwiched between two people like that, you generally become ham. And for Gordon and David and Jimmy and everybody who's here, Nancy was super special, and I'm so happy we can give her a nod today. You know, it's interesting, Sharon, I can't wait to hug you, because after all these years, okay, so my buddy Nancy and Sharon, that's what Nancy is to me. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about a long friendship, and I had to write it down because I didn't think I could do it without notes. We weren't two peas in a pod. Nancy was very quick on the draw when she needed to be, but I had to take it a little slower. But so we were that kind of friendship of opposites that emerges because, you talk on the phone for an hour every day for years and years and years. And then you know that after hanging up the phone, Nancy would turn to David and say, "David, you can't believe what Jody just did." And, fortunately, I benefited from David's amplification of Nancy's wisdom and guidance. So we met in our teens. And as we grew up, Nancy just became a part of our family. A sister to my brother, who's here with his beautiful wife, and a cousin to my cousin, who's also here. It was so fun to see quiet, shy Nancy, the girl next door, laugh to the point of tears at the dinner table with us, bent over double. I think my brothers deliberately tried to get her to laugh when her mouth was full, right, Jeff? Yeah, see? But after the first 10 years of talking with each other, we started to listen to each other, and 20 years later, we still talked about everything. Husbands, households, children, their colleges, our careers, finances, movies, haircuts, nails. Nothing was really off limits, and we just kept on shocking each other into major belly laughs every conversation. That's what made the whole That's what made the whole best friend thing with Nancy so much fun. The cup, as you know, was always half full with her, and those conversations just kept on going, well, right up through our 60s, that part of life when you have to laugh, Okay, so in the middle of COVID, with the West Coast burning to the ground where we live in Canada and the Canadian border still closed, Nancy decides she's had enough. She'd been managing to overcome frightful odds forever, so at first I didn't get it. But she decided she had had enough and decided to let me know. So we talked about it. I'm so grateful that she had the courage to provide the emotional strength that I needed and she needed for that last conversation. She starts off by saying, "We always knew she would go first." We, like I was in agreement somehow. You know how she used to do that? She kind of just slid it in. I told her we still had places to go and things to do. A trip to New Mexico, exhibitions in the East Wing, getting lost in the Library of Congress, although that was getting old. But what about all of that? And she just smiled. That little smile where, without saying anything at all, she lets me know that I'm stupid again. Her pauses often said more than her words. I told her I didn't know how I would manage without her. She said she didn't know how I would manage without her either. Wicked sense of humor. So, with Jimmy's help and David's patience and Gordon's puppy, I came in on Zoom and hugged and danced and laughed, and so we are now going to usher in yet another decade in our long friendship. Game on, Nance. God bless you.
I'm Andrea, another niece of Nancy's, reading another poem by Mary Oliver. and also remembering Nancy for, I think like everyone else, for her humor and her frank candor and her ability to show everyone how to really just appreciate life. So this is Sleeping in the Forest by Mary Oliver. I thought the earth remembered me. She took me back so tenderly, arranging her dark skirts, her pockets full of lichen and seeds. I slept as never before, a stone on the riverbed, nothing between me and the white fire of the stars but my thoughts, and they floated light as moths among the branches of the perfect trees. All night I heard the small kingdoms breathing around me, the insects and the birds who do their work in the darkness. All night I rose and fell, as if in water, grappling with a luminous doom. By morning, I had vanished at least a dozen times into something better.
Hello, I'm Gordon King, Nancy's only sibling. My sister and I had a special brother-sister relationship due to the traumatic death of our mother when I was 13 and Nancy was only 9 years old. We both depended on each other for love and emotional support at such a critical point in our lives. It was especially difficult for Nancy at such a young age to not have a mom to help her with growing up. We both lived through several stepmothers and stepfamilies. In fact, I have the unusual distinction of having been best man at 3 of my father's weddings. Nancy was braver than I was to speak up to my father. As Sharon said, Nancy spoke whatever was on her mind, and quite bravely so. She let my father know about some of his choices and how she felt about them. And she had to live in a situation at home after I had left the house, which were uncomfortable and required diplomacy on her part to keep harmony in the household. Nancy was diagnosed at age 32 with adult muscular dystrophy. It started with a limp, and the condition got slowly worse as time went on. Many of us admired her attitude. She never complained, even though she was having to cope with her MD, later requiring a wheelchair, and later again a ramp van. And when she could not manage to work her way to the back of the van to lower her wheelchair with a lift, she had to use the ramp van. Very difficult circumstances, but nobody ever heard her complain. Of course, Nancy even went on to graduate school for a master's degree and became an ESOL teacher, as you've all heard, in Montgomery County. In the early days before she was at Rockview, more permanently, the school would send her to different schools, although when they sent her, they didn't pay any attention to the fact that she might be at a school that didn't have an elevator or a ramp, which really set up a challenge for her. I can remember talking to her about the YMCA across the street from her not having a ramp, and she complained and reminded them about the American with Disabilities Act, and she was pretty proactive in letting different commercial property owners know about it. In fact, we talked about the Georgetown Square shopping center where she went, and they didn't have the ramp vans, and she brought that to their attention, and I think was instrumental in getting that fixed. Nancy would even visit the farmer's market in Bethesda, traveling in her wheelchair, and we took walks in the local park via her wheelchair. Nancy loved children and animals and was a strong advocate for nature and the environment. I love my dear sister and will miss her always. She had a life well lived and lived to the fullest.
Hello, I'm Pamela King, and Nancy was my sister-in-law for 36 years. She was probably the best sister-in-law you could ever wish for. Never did I ever hear Nancy complain, be jealous. Her giving nature was truly an inspiration to everyone who knew her. And what we in the beginning shared is I realized when I first met Gordon and really got to know his family, that he came into my big loving family, but they didn't have that, unfortunately, from his father's actions. And then Nancy was so blessed because she married David, and he too had a big loving family. So I think it was our families that became their families. And I tried always to host gatherings to give a sense of family, even though, frankly, Steve, Gordon's father, he didn't deserve what both of them always gave him. But I felt what they had was this unbelievable bond. And it's unusual, I think, to have a parent who basically is not that interested in his own children. Steve was a brilliant man, but the women really came first. That's the way it was. But we shared a lot of good things together. Our stepmother giving us the most horrible paintings. That's what we got for Christmas, birthdays, whatever. And, but, you know, it didn't, Nancy was not a materialistic person. She was not. She was content with the most simple things. And our, unfortunately, mother-in-law was the complete opposite. So we kind of had that where we sort of laughed about it. You know, we got the big list of what she wanted, and then we got her paintings. So I felt that what I had in Nancy was just a kind, loving. I would say to her sometimes, Nancy, I don't want you to like do Christmas Eve, because that was hard for her. And she'd go, no, I want Jimmy to have memories of me doing family things, even though I always hosted the big occasions and got the family together. Because to me, family is everything. And I think same thing for David. His family is a big, big, loving family. So Nancy was blessed to marry David, and Jimmy was her light of her life. He was everything. Never did I see a child more adored and loved than Jimmy. And she was truly, truly proud of everything, as was David. And I will miss her because she was very special. And there aren't many people like Nancy. I can't say that I'm like that. She never wanted for anything, and she never felt sorry for herself. She was just saw the beauty of life, and that's her message to everyone. Be thankful for the simple things, for the plants, for your children. And many people who knew her did look at her. She was a very unique person because she truly was.
Hi, my name is Kathy Meisner, and Nancy and I met, at a new mothers group just a few months after our boys, Jimmy and Jonah, were born at Sibley Hospital 24 hours apart. And we always speculated that they had conspired to get us together. In my son Jonah's words, Nancy was like a second mom to me. She was unfathomably, immeasurably kind and patient. She let us roam, climb, build things, take risks, be boys for years in our childhoods. And while our boys played, Nancy and I would talk for hours and hours. I was often, always in awe of her ability to assess a challenging family dynamic or a work-related one. I would ask myself now and then, what would Nancy do? And I remember Nancy telling me about the way that she thought about school and education for her child, and I think that must have carried over to her work as a teacher. She said that school needs to offer the heart and the imagination, grounding and growth, because we can't know what the future will be like or what specific kinds of knowledge will be needed. Nancy also told me, and I am grateful to this day, that when she and Dave and Jimmy looked at schools, she especially liked the one they chose, because everyone looked happy there. That was Nancy. She was so often able to cut through the fog of thinking that surrounds making a choice. So I'm grateful too. I thank Nancy for commiseration, laughter, consolation, practical wisdom and advice, and that shared adventure of being new mothers together.
Again, I hope the ones who are thinking about telling a story do that for us in a few minutes. You've heard a fair amount of Nancy's friendship and competence, and my job is to talk about us. What now? This from John's Gospel. My sheep hear my voice, I know them, and they follow me. I give them eternal life, and they will never perish. No one will snatch them out of my hand. My Father, in regard to what he has given me, is greater than all, and no one can snatch them out of the Father's hand. It is, at least for me, a comforting thought to know that we are sheep who already belong to a flock, don't have to earn our way in, and that nothing and no one can, not even ourselves, separate us from that all-encompassing, life-affirming, creative, cosmic power and love. Comforting. But having grown up next to a sheep farm, I know a little that's also troubling about being a sheep. Our family doctor, mostly for tax purposes, happened to have a few dozen sheep on the farm that was up a little dirt road beside our house. So he tried to keep a few dozen sheep for a little income and tax savings. He tried to keep a few sheep. And the Wallace family, another neighbor, tried to keep a vegetable garden. Not a good mix. One would think that sheep raising would be a rather tranquil enterprise, and certainly vegetable gardening should be a tranquil enterprise, but not when they are combined. Not so much when they're close together. The sheep were constantly wandering down the dirt road and into the Wallace's garden, and the Wallaces were constantly chasing sheep back up the dirt road toward their home. I think the tradition is that sheep are regarded as stupid. You've seen the cattle guards that are on farms or ranches that keep the cattle or sheep from going through the gate, iron, steel bars, or a grid that scares them. It works for a while. It works well for cattle. It works for a while for sheep, but sheep have solved the puzzle and will lie down next to the grid and roll across it. They're not stupid. They're actually pretty smart. And in my experience, they may be smart, but they're also a little thoughtless in both senses of that. The sheep don't think deeply, and when they do, it's pretty much about what they can eat in front of them. So it seems to me shepherd is a good metaphor for sheeple who may need a little help and guidance, maybe in a classroom or on a field trip. I remember a clergy conference I went to a few years ago, and the speaker was a former public school teacher. And she was talking about how in the Gospels, Jesus was always taking with him his 3 favorite disciples, apparently, Peter, James, and John. I'd always thought they must have grown up to be the valedictorian and salutatorian favorite students of the teacher. But the speaker allowed as how it was her experience that when a teacher was going to leave the classroom for several minutes, they didn't take the best student with them. They took the ones she couldn't trust to be alone. So I'm sorry if you were one of those who thought that you were one of the best students and a favorite who was taken with the teacher out of the room. It seems to me a good teacher will let you think that, even though it's just the opposite. A good teacher will encourage you to think well of yourself and hope and work to make you better. And as a mentor of mine used to say, a good teacher knows exactly what she wants to do and is prepared to do something else. It seems to me it's been repeated to us in some of these stories. Nancy was a good teacher. I'm not sure she actually always wanted to know what she wanted to do. Accounting, landscaping, architecture, art, teaching. She was prepared to do something else, like teaching, or shepherding, if you will. And far from being sheeply thoughtless, she had to be thoughtful to deal with her own challenges and the challenges of her students. God, particularly in the book of Proverbs, is referred to as wisdom, personified. Wisdom, the combination of knowledge and experience. Wisdom is a teacher who guides and challenges, keeps close watch over students, keeping them safe, but also not overprotective. My favorite poet, Gerhard Frost, put it this way: happy birthday, a great teacher. His name was Graham, and he lives in a cluster of little shadows, mostly 9-year-olds. They love him and follow and wait and wonder, confident that their curiosity will be fed. Now a book, now a picture, now a field trip or a story, always something worth waiting and working for. Yes, a great teacher. But when I think of Graham, I want to laugh, not in ridicule, but in admiration and remembrance. I remember Graham's birthday. We had gathered to celebrate with cake and candles, cards, and conversation. One card, in childish script, read, "You are a great, good teacher, but mean. Happy birthday, the 4th grade." But mean? No, they loved him. No one truly thought him mean. They were saying, "You are good to us. You make it all so interesting. We really think it's fun, but thank you for helping us to outgrow our need of you. Thank you for not crippling us by running our errands for us, the bracing errands of the mind." I think we're all tempted to look for, to want a teacher, a boss, a parent, a partner, a president, a king, a God who will make life easy for us. The good ones don't. Learning English isn't easy, but for people who need to learn it, and fast, it's helpful to have a teacher who challenges as well as support, and who knows it's her job to make them outgrow their need of her. It seems to me that's Nancy's lesson and legacy. And nothing can take that away. To challenge and to support, to let us know that she has given us already enough, and no one can take away the love that binds us to her and to each other. A love that is eternal and true. And now, Amazing Grace.
'twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I've first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. His grace hath brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've known as days to sing God's praise, the hour we've just begun. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. 'Twas blind, but now I see.
And now may the Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make God's face to shine on us and be gracious to us. The Lord look upon us with favor and give us peace. Let us go in peace.